Sister Princess. And Sister Princess, this character, he's, again, another very wealthy character, and he is a butler. And we never really know the butler's name, but they always say Gia. And it doesn't really translate. So we called him Jeeves, because that's a name that sounds like a butler's name, is Jeeves. So he was called Jeeves in the English version. So it kind of depends where you're going with it. But that's just a point like of a cultural reference where it doesn't, there's not really a translation for that term. So there are 3 different instances of shows that I worked on where that term was used, but we interpret it in 3 entirely different ways depending on what the circumstance was that it was being used in. And that's a little tricky thing. That in an earlier episode of The Wallflower, I think it's in volume 3, which is out maybe this week or next week. There's an episode where Kyohei, this guy who's like crazy and loud and always wants to eat, he decides that what he absolutely must have this very moment is that it's winter and he wants to eat nabe at a kotatsu, because that is the most quintessentially Japanese thing that you can do in wintertime, is have nabe at the kotatsu. Now, nabe is a kind of stew, and a kotatsu is one of those low tables that is heated, and it has that kind of skirt around it, and everybody scooches up to the kotatsu, and you put your legs up under that, and it's all nice and warm and toasty, and you're having your nabe, and the nabe's warm, and everybody's happy. And so he's on this mission that they have to have nabe at the kotatsu. And guess what we said in the English version? They were having nabe at the kotatsu. We didn't have them having a hot pot at their little funny table or whatever we were going to call it, you know. So there really were not English equivalents for that, although the translator she put all the way through the translation, she translated nabe into hot pot. We translated it back to nabe. I think in the subtitle version it does actually say hot pot. And in English we have them saying nabe. Another thing is, it's a funny word. There's a point where they're all yelling about it and they're like, nabe, 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 nabe. And if you had them all going hot pot, hot pot, hot pot, it's just not funny. Also, the director of the show, his nickname is Nabe Sheen, so it kind of, and he's one of the people who's yelling nabe, 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 and his nickname is Nabe Sheen. So anyway, that was the point where we actually left it as the original text. And The Wallflower is a show that's very fan-oriented show. Most people watching The Wallflower is not the very first anime they've ever seen, so they're probably a little bit, more in tune with kotatsus and all that kind of stuff. So every single cultural reference is weighed on, an individual merit. Like, I think there would be no need, for example, to translate something like kimono. I think most people know what a kimono is. I don't think you'd have to call it a robe. People know what a kimono is. And in fact, I know there have been a few times when the translator has changed sayonara to goodbye, I think, you know what, we'll just say sayonara here, because sometimes you just need all those darn syllables. Sayonara. Hey, it's 4 syllables, and that you've just translated it to goodbye, which was too short, so we're changing it back to sayonara, because it fits the flap. So, of course, a lot of the decisions that we have to make are based on something fitting those stupid little amount of flaps. And since they weren't actually done to match anything, nobody's mouth really does this in real life, okay? It's a square. And so nobody's mouth actually does that in real life. And anyway, you guys have questions about this stuff? No?
I know, like in the earlier panel, when you were with Samantha Innovate Heart, you said that sometimes you guys get like mandates from the Japanese to do stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And that's of course on a case-by-case basis for different things. But I mean, Nabashin, ADV has done adaptations of several of his shows: Excel Saga and the Raven Icon Brothers, Kuni Kuni Poemi, obviously The Wallflower now, and he's an awesome guy. He's very, very funny. And the number one thing he wants is that when we do this show in English, he wants to be funny. And I've been at screenings with Nabashin where he has watched his shows being screened in English. Of course, he really doesn't understand English, but watching it, he knows that everybody's laughing uproariously at all of the right times, and that makes him very, very happy. So he likes that. That's good. But yeah, there are certain things that on particular shows, for example, with Hello Kitty's Animation Theater, one of the reasons, I mean, besides the fact that I'm this huge Hello Kitty dork, I'm very obsessive about the show and Sanrio and everything, so I was very particular about things like the characters' names. Those characters' names are trademarked, and they're trademarked to be spelled a certain way. So the translator that was working on the show is not a Sanrio fan, and when you're Romanizing a name, there are often 2 or 3 or 4 different ways that you could Romanize a Japanese name to be written in English. But guess what? These are Sanrio characters, and there is only one way that their name can be written that is the correct Romanized version, because those are trademarked. So I went through all that with a fine-tooth comb when I was working on the scripts. When I did, we did an English version of the opening and closing theme songs. It's the only Hello Kitty TV show that's been released that had both Japanese tracks subtitled in English and an English language version. Every other Hello Kitty show that's ever been released in the US has only had an English language version. So I think that's very cool. But for the English language version, we recorded an English language opening and closing song, which I wrote the lyrics to. And even though I was doing a very close, just an adaptation of the original lyrics, it still had to get approved by Mr. Suji. So, yeah, on a lot of these shows, it's certain things they can get very particular about certain things being worded a certain way, or a certain name, or the title of the show. Yeah.
I had a question going back to the Nabashin director. I've only seen Excel Saga and Pony Pony Pony, and he's in both of them.
Yes.
I've read the Excel manga, and he is not in that.
Well, that's because he's the director.
I was questioning, does he put himself in everything he adapts?
Yes, he puts himself in all of his shows, and not only that, he's gotten to be so notorious for that in Japan that he showed us a clip at Onicon last year in Houston that another director put Nabashin in his show, so he got to voice a version of Nabashin in another show. But
because I like that character.
He's hysterical, and he's in Narima Daikon Brothers too. Nabashin is. He's in that.
I saw a stuffed character of him in Tenchi GXP. Or somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, he's also, of course, makes a little cameo in this, a much smaller part in this. He's actually listed in the script. His character is called Mysterious Voice. So anytime Mysterious Voice is listed in the show, it's actually Nabashin.
And does ADB get the same actor to do him?
Yes, it's Brett Weaver. Brett Weaver has been the voice of Nabashin now in 4 different shows, and those guys get along so well together in real life. It's very, very funny. When we went out, this is totally digressing from the point of script writing, but just have to say how awesome Nabashin is. When we went out to dinner last year, and Nabashin actually said to Brett, he goes, "I am me, I am you, you are me, we are the same person." And so it totally doesn't make any sense. But another funny thing about that is at Onicon last year, somebody asked Nabashin at a panel, what did you think about this guy doing his voice in all of the English language versions of the show? What do you think about that guy? And Brett was standing in the audience somewhere, and he stands up and he goes, "He likes him just fine." And Nabashin got a kick out of that too. Yes, anyway, so Brett Weaver is back again as Mysterious Voice in The Wallflower. He also plays some other little bit parts in there too, but that has certainly been a lot of fun. And